May 7, 2020 meeting to order. This is the budget workshop.
Yes, sir.
It's time to call this May 7, 2020 special board meeting and budget workshop to order. This meeting is still not, there's some board members that can't hear it, sir.
Okay, if you can give me a thumbs up, whoever can hear it. If you can't hear, then we'll go fix it. Miss Amy, you can hear? Okay, Ms. Guanajuato? She can't hear. Ms. Gonzalez, can you hear? She can't hear. And Ms. Schoenfeld, can you hear? Alright, so let me just correct Ms. Guanajuato's audio and Ms. Gonzalez's audio. Give me a minute.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, can you give me a sound check on Gonzalez's audio? Okay, we can hear, I can hear. Okay, good. Thank you, sir. Okay, we're gonna start this all over again. I'd like to call this May 7, 2020 a budget workshop and special call meeting of the Board of Trustees to order. This meeting will be conducted by video conferencing in accordance with the governor's authorization concerning suspension of certain open meeting law requirements for COVID-19 coronavirus disaster. Madam Secretary, would you do us the honor of calling roll? Mr. Contreras?
Present.
Ms. Guanajuato? Yes, sir. Ms. Haynes? Mr. Mesa? Here. Mr. Overfeld? Mr. Smith? And myself. Sir, we have a quorum. Let the record show that we do have a quorum of board members and that this meeting is being conducted with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. At this time, you would please stand for, first of all, the Pledge of Allegiance, and then will be followed by the roll of silence. Okay, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll take a few moments now to reflect in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Again, I'd like to say good evening to each and every one of you. First item of business that we have is a budget school board workshop. First item, discussion of the Texas Association of School Boards TASB salary study report by Greg Garcia.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. Every year, we provide a contract with TASB for them to conduct a salary study to make sure that our wages for the employees are compared to market value. So tonight, we have Luz Cadena, who is going to provide the results of the salary study.
Mr. Mesa, while Luz is brought up on the screen, I'm sure she's on standby somewhere. I'm going to bring up the presentation that she'll be sharing with us. And Ms. Garcia, can you make sure that someone lets Luz into
Yes.
We'll begin as soon as she's ready. Mr. Mesa, members of the board, again, our goal today is just to present the comparison to market with a couple of models of potential cost of living adjustments or raises. Now, we're going to present the salary study, but I think that it's just important to remind everyone that we really need a whole lot more information before we can move forward with even beginning to think of what kind of adjustments to the salary would be given. For example, we don't know what the tax collection rate has been. For all these years, it's been very positive. We just don't know what people's availability is going to be to pay the taxes. So we just need to keep that in mind. Are there any questions before we begin, Mr. Mesa?
I'll ask the board members if they have any questions to raise their hand, please.
Mr. Overfeld has a question.
Mr. Overfeld?
Yes, sir. And I know it's all preliminary, and you talked about the tax rolls, particularly out of the county. But we're also going to monitor what the legislature is, and unfortunately, the legislature won't meet till January. But with what the state comptroller is predicting, and already articles being written about the downward trend in funding, we're going to take a lot of that initial data over the next couple of months and look at that as well.
Yes, Mr. Overfeld, we've been monitoring everything that's coming out of the commissioner's office, the governor's office, the comptroller's office. And when we have something clear to report, that we'll absolutely share that. There's just a whole lot of unknowns right now, and that's why as we talk about potential salaries, which is 80% of our budget, we just have to be careful.
Correct. Thank you.
Mr. Mesa?
Yes, I know that we're having monthly meetings with the Commissioner of Education, and that downward trend, his prediction is going to be for at least 2 to 3 years in the funding issues.
Yes, sir. If it's okay, Mr. Mesa, I'm going to turn it over to Luz Cadena. She is already with us online.
Yes.
Luz, welcome, and I'll be handling the presentation from this end. I'll try to change slides, but if I'm too slow or too fast, just let me know, okay?
Okay, that's great. Thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to present. It's a little bit of a different style, but I think we're all in that same mode. Good afternoon, board members and board president and Dr. Rios. I'm happy to provide you this information. So we're going to go ahead and get started and talk about the peer districts that we look at every year, which is the same set of peer districts that we have been using, the large set, 13 area districts primarily in the San Antonio area, as you can see, and then we do have San Angelo and a few districts that kind of fall in the Region 1 area. 3 districts did not participate in our salary survey. Those are the ones that have the double asterisk, which is Crystal City, East Central, and Southwest ISD. But we were able to get their teacher schedule. So we do have their pay data information for teachers on that group. And then you can see the groups that we really narrowed down for the non-exempt category. So this is kind of just the graph that illustrates how your teacher pay schedule compares to the market median of those 13 peer districts that we just looked at. As you can see, really the district made some significant grounds. Yeah, a lot of this due to HB3 last year. Of course, we're talking about different situation this coming biennium year. But what we saw here and what we see here is that the district really gained ground not only at entry, but at that 15-year mark, where you're right at market, and then that 20-year mark where you really surpassed it and are at 2% above market. Where we do continue to have that big gap is still at that 5-year mark. And so that 5-year mark, you are about $5,000 below market or 9%. If we go to the next slide, this is the detail to that one graph. So there's a lot of numbers and a lot of information on this one slide. But basically, what this presents is those 13 peer districts and their teacher salary schedule levels or salary levels. And they're sorted from your highest paying district, which is South San at that 0-year mark, 54,500, to the lowest paying district of this peer group, which is San Angelo. And then that red line shows where you fall as far as the starting pay. So you fall between Eagle Pass, 48,000, and United ISD, number 5, with a 50,200. Your starting salary is 48,250. So of these 13 peer districts in your group, you gave the second highest pay increase, a result of HB3 last year. You gave that 10% pay increase, and Eagle Pass ended up providing an 11.4% pay increase. So kudos to the district for making that commitment and increase to teacher pay. So the next, this next slide really narrows your comparison. We've been looking at how you compare to Uvalde and to Eagle Pass, and we have San Angelo in this mix as well. So the way to read this is basically the orange line. That's you at each one of those 5-year intervals up to 20 years. So you can see that you're paying above San Angelo being that green line, which is really at the bottom as far as those 0, 5, 10, and 15-year mark, and then goes up a little bit at that 20-year mark. Then you've got Eagle Pass at that blue line that starts out a little bit stronger, but then dips at the top. And then Uvalde, who is, a little bit low at the bottom and then gains ground at the top of the range. But definitely continue to be competitive with this group. Next. And if you have any questions, please let me know. So this is the detail to that one graph of those 3 peer districts. And you can see here that, again, just what that one graph illustrated, very strong. You're positioned very strong at each one of those 5 benchmark years against this group here, where anywhere from 5 to 9% above the median of those 3 peer districts. We're going to look at your stipends that you offer for the shortage areas. And what we have here is you offer a $1,500 median stipend for a master's in actually any field. We're seeing more and more districts move towards the subject area master's degree stipend. For one, there continues to be, the research that supports there's correlation for student gains with teachers that actually have a master's in their content area. So you can see there that we've seen a few more districts that are going that route, and then especially with dual credit programs, it actually helps the districts having those teachers with that master's in the content area. The other stipends, secondary math and science, you continue to be very strong with them. And then when we move to the special ed, we do see a higher or stronger stipend offered for teachers in special ed assignments that are over the life skills, autism, behavioral units. Those are much tougher assignments. And so districts are really moving towards giving those assignments a little bit stronger stipend. And so we are, when I get to the recommendations, there are two recommendations that address the subject area master's degree stipend and then an improved stipend for the special ed self-contained area. And then for the other stipend areas, you are very competitive, where you are pretty much lined up or a little bit above market median for the bilingual and the ESL. And then lastly, on the campus assignment, United has one that basically is an incentive for teachers to go to the low-performing campuses. So moving on. You should be familiar with this one slide here. This is basically what we refer to as our histogram of teacher experience. And what it shows you is the distribution of your teachers, and this is the experience level of all of your teachers from 0 years to 30 plus years. And what that 50 percentile line indicates is basically that half of your teachers have 11 years of experience or less, and the other half have 11 years of experience and above. When we drill down and take a look at the actual average total education experience of your teachers, it's about 11.9 years. And that really lines up with the statewide median of 12 years. So, you have a well experienced teacher workforce. So any questions on the market comparison for teachers? Okay. We're going to move on to the proposed teacher schedules. We're going to start with the 2% model. This is a $1,160 pay increase for all your teachers. The 2% is calculated based on the market median salary of teachers in your peer group, and that's how we arrive at that 1,160. And we do have some additional adjustments that you can see there beginning on the proposed hiring schedule, year 3 through year 8. And that's to raise that 5-year salary and narrow the gap. We're not closing the gap, we're narrowing the gap a little bit so that looking at how you compare to the current market, you move from 91% at that 5-year mark to 94%. And then, at the 10-year mark, you're at 95%, and you continue to remain strong at 100% of market at year 15, and then 3% above market at year 20. Your continuing teachers will move through the range maximum, and you've got a hiring schedule that extends to 35 years. So the next model, this is a more conservative model. I think, as Dr. Rios had mentioned to you, right now, In the past, we certainly could say that the trend had been, as far as pay increases, anywhere from 2 to 2.5%. We are in very uncharted waters, as everyone knows right now. We don't know what what the state is going to do, and we certainly have an economy that's suffering. We've got high unemployment, and we don't know the funding, how the state of Texas will continue to be able to provide some of the funding. So we do have a conservative model here. It's a 1.5% pay increase. That's an $870 general pay increase for your teachers. The starting salary is a little bit lower. It's $49,000. And then we do have some adjustments at that year 3 through 8, again, just to make a little bit of gain from that 91% where you currently are to 93%, as you can see there. And then the additional $50 adjustments that you see there through year 16 at $30 there, that is to ensure that your proposed hiring schedule for 2021 with this 1.5% is no less than what your current salary levels are. Because as you can see, you've got some step differentials or experience differentials that are about $900. And so we have to give a little bit more or an additional adjustment so that it wouldn't be less. Otherwise, your salary levels would be lower than where you are right now. And we don't want to do that. Going on. So this next slide here shows really how the two proposed models would place you relative to your current market position. As we've mentioned, we don't know what the other districts are going to do, but you can see here that the green model, that's model 1, that's the 2%, positions you a little bit more competitively than the model 2, which is the 1.5%. Knowing that there may be some market movement, it's probably not going to be as much as what we've seen in the past. Next slide. All right, so any questions on the teacher market and proposed schedules? Because we're going to move on now to market comparisons for your administrative professional group. Okay. So we're going to begin with the central administration. So we kind of subdivide the groups just for ease of looking at market comparisons. So this is the central administration group. We're talking about 14 jobs, district jobs that we match to our salary survey benchmarks. And the graph shows really where they fall relative to market, with the dark blue indicating that those are the ones that are within 10% of market. And then the light blue to the right of that zero line, those are the ones that are above or more than 10% above market. You don't have any in this group that is more than 10% below market, which would be to the left of that 0% line. So overall, this group is really right at 100% of market on average when we take a look at the whole average of these 14 benchmarks. Now, the detail information, so the market tables with the detail information you have, and those begin on page 28 of the document that was provided to you. So the next group is your campus administration. So this is your campus principals and your assistant principals. So we include counselors within this group. We're talking about 9 district positions that we benchmarked. And so this group overall is 6% above market. There is an influence of days that is driving the above market comparisons on your campus administration. And that's with your assistant principals at the middle school. They actually work 13 days more than what is in the market median days. And so that drives a little bit that 15% above market. And then for your assistant principal at the high school, yours work 11 days more than the median in the duty days. And so again, you can see there the above market comparison may be influenced by those additional days for this group. Next slide. So now we're going to look at your professional group. This actually is composed of various positions, professional categories, speech language pathologist, your librarian, your network administrator, your diag. So they're professional support positions. There's 21 of these district jobs that we were able to match. And so for this group overall, they're 2% above market. So we have basically the, again, those that are the light blue above that zero line are more than 10% above market. And then you see the dark blue, we have pretty much, let me see, 3 positions that are spot on as far as 100% of market. But within that blue, you can see those positions that are within that 10% of market. And then one job in this category here, that's the payroll supervisor. That's the one position that is more than 10% below market of all of these jobs within this pay group. So, the district has done really well as far as at least keeping pay so that it's not, so that employees aren't below more than 10% of market for the categories that we've just looked at. So now we're going to move to what we call the non-exempt group, and we're going to start with the clerical technical category. And, we know that this group has been with the district for a very long time. In fact, just as probably the administrators and probably the teachers as well. So we're talking about, the above market comparison is going to be contributed to individuals being with the district for a very long time. And then we've got that legacy, the former pay structures that were the 45-year plus that kind of led to some of this above market pay. So, you can see that for this group, we've got 25 district jobs that we did match to market. And of this group, on average, we are looking at really just 1% above overall the market comparison. So this group, we have 7 positions that are more than 10% above market. And then you really have 14 of those positions that are in that dark blue color, that they are within 10% of market. And then 4 positions in this category that are more than 10% below market for this group here. The next group is your instructional support. And this group here, we don't have any job that is really paid below 10% of market. So we have them all pretty much within 10% of market or above 10% of market. And we're talking about 6 benchmark jobs. These are your instructional support positions and your special ed jobs, your life skills jobs. They're paid competitively. That's good. Those are the individuals that, really work with, the students that really need the most support. And as one of the other consultants calls them, those that work with the group, she calls them angels on earth here. So again, doing very well. And then you've got your LVN position, 5% within market. But again, we're talking about all your jobs in this category being within 10% of market. The last group that we're going to look at as far as market comparison is your auxiliary. And so this is 23 district jobs that we were able to match as well. And so for this group, we have actually 6 jobs, those light blue ones to the right of that 0 at the top there. Those are the ones that are paid more than 10% above market. Again, this is legacy. This is tenure as far as years of service that individuals have been in these jobs. And then we have 15 positions that really are paid within 10% of market. So we're seeing such a better picture, more controlled pay. We don't have the wild swings that we used to have before. And we still have pay that is competitive. And for those that aren't, then we work on those and you know, we provide a little bit stronger pay increases. So 2 positions in this category that are paid below 10% of market, as you can see there. Any questions before we move to talking about some of the recommendations in the cost models? Okay.
Bruce,
Yes.
I just want to say that over the years, it seems like we're getting closer and closer to the market value, because there were a lot of disparities in past years.
Mm-hmm.
It's looking a lot better. There's still some adjustments to make, but they're very minor.
Yes. I mean, you know, I've been working with the district for years, and you know, I've been privileged to have the opportunity to work with the district and see the, you know, see the improvements and see the gains and the corrections that we needed to make. And, you know, all of that is due to you guys, because if you know, if the board has not approved what has been recommended and made the changes that needed to be made, we wouldn't be where we are today. So, you know, thank you very much to you guys as well. All right, so we're going to start with this Model 1, which is, you know, again, going back to that teacher schedule where we had the 2% increase, the $1,160 increase for teachers. We had those adjustments at years 3 through 8. And then what we're recommending here is, because now what we want to do is make sure that we don't continue to advance further those that are really paid strong to market. We want to continue to give them some, but we don't want to push them so much above market that we get them considerably above the range maximums. So what we've modeled here is really an additional 1% midpoint increase for those that are paid below 95% of market. So we're going to target those that continue to be paid below market, and that is at 95% of market or below. Give them an additional 1% of midpoint, which in essence would end up being a 3% for them. And then for those that are more than 5% above market, we're going to give them half of the general pay increase. They still get an increase, but we begin to slow down that advancement a little bit. And, you know, it's not like they're not getting an increase, and it's not like they're not being paid above market. And this is a way to also control some of the costs, but continue to make the needed improvements that we seek in this process. So the cost for doing this, as you can see, the 2% for teachers is $843,000 plus. Then, you know, we're talking about what I don't want to forget to mention is that as I stated early on in the presentation, when we're looking at the teaching field stipends, we are recommending some changes in those stipends. One of those being implementing a subject area master's degree stipend of $2,000. So the increase here is really going to be $500 more because you were already paying a $1,500 master's, and we're increasing it to $2,000, but we're shifting the monies from one bucket to another one, being content area master's. The other stipend that we are talking about as well is increasing the special ed self-contained. These are those units that are those, you know, more challenging units, increasing that stipend to $2,000 for those assignments there. So you can see the costs there and the count that we were able to identify, that administration was able to identify for us so that we could at least model what that cost would look like. So that's your teacher cost, includes the improvement to the stipends. Then the administrative professional, you can see the cost at $231,000 plus for that 2%, plus some teacher equity adjustments. We always take a look at how do your counselors, your DIACs, your assistant principals look relative to the teachers, given their years of experience. and teacher daily rate, and make sure that they're not paid any less than what they would be paid if they were on that teacher schedule. So just 3 of them that we looked at for that we identified some adjustments. And then, as we mentioned, for those that are paid below 95% of market, we do have an additional 1% of midpoint. There's 32 in this category for a cost of $23,625. So really, when you see these costs, they're marginal. We're not talking about a huge cost for additional adjustments. Then for those that are paid more than 5% above market, that 1% cost there. There's 71 individuals in this group, and we're talking about 52,000, almost 52,500, shy of that 52.5. So we've got the paraprofessional group, and so you can see here that it's $217,700 and $3 for the 2%. And then, we've got those adjustments to the new minimums because we continue to fix the structures and continue to increase the starting rates of pay so that you continue to be competitive as well. And then the additional 1% for those that are below 95% of market, that's 141 at shy of that 40,000, it's 39,645. And then 1%, so half of that 2% GPI, which is 1% for those that are paid more than 5% above market, that's 127 in this category. So we're talking about 33,844. Then for the auxiliary, for this group, we are looking at 149,853. Now, I do have to apologize for this one group. There is one cost item that is not reflected, and I just caught it before our meeting, which is it's not a whole bunch. But for this group, when we talk about the adjustments, the additional adjustment for employees below 95% of market, that one line item was hidden. It's not showing on there. But for this group, with the 2%, we're talking about a $14,940 cost. And so that would be for the auxiliary. And then for those that are paid more than 5% above market, we're talking about 148 employees in that group at 38,228. So a total cost here, as is noted here, is 1.4. When we add that 14,940 that we left out, we're talking more in the 1,456,868. So it's 14,940 more. And I do apologize for that. I should have caught that beforehand. On the model 2, this is the more conservative model. It's a 1.5%. So this is the $870 increase for continuing teachers with those additional adjustments as well. And then with the same concept, but reduced additional increase because we're talking about a 1.5%, half of that. So providing employees that are still below 95% of market, an additional 0.75 here. So in essence, you're talking about a 1.5% of midpoint plus an additional 0.75% for those that are still below 95% of market. And then for those that are above 5% of market, instead of getting a 1.5% of midpoint, they get a 0.75% of midpoint. And we can take a look at the cost on the next page. So on this next page, you can see here the cost associated for teachers and administrative professional, the same way that we just walked through and looked at. For the auxiliary group, because again, since we used the same template, it hid, we just accidentally hid that one line item. And so we're talking for this group with the 1.5%, this is really a $12,484. So it's $12,500 for those auxiliary employees that are below 95% of market, that would get an additional 0.75% on top of the 1.5% of midpoint. And then 148 here would get the half of the 1.5% increase, which would be 0.75. So this cost model, it shows 1,137,264, but it would actually end up being 1,149,748 with that 12,484 increase amount that is not included currently. Now that is it for my presentation. You have the proposed pay plans in the back of your document, those market details. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to field any questions that you may have.
Ms. Webb has a question, Mr. Mesa?
Okay, Mrs. Webb, I don't see the picture, but Ms. Webb?
You're muted, ma'am.
Okay, now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's not, it's just basically a correction. If we look on page 28,
Sure.
where we have those individuals that are above the 110%, it indicates that we don't have any. But when we look at the chart, there are 2 individuals that are above the 110%.
Hold on just
Am I
a
correct or
second.
am I wrong? Because I see one at 117% and one at 125%.
Hold
What
on.
page was that, Ms. Webb?
28.
So on 28, I'm sorry, and it's down at the little summary table.
Yes,
Is it the summary table where it shows 12
yes, yes, ma'am.
and it should be 14 positions?
Well, yes, but
Yes.
there could be 2 that are above the 110%.
Yes. So the reason that the summary table shows the 12 is that we exclude the outliers from the average to when we're looking at how do you compare to market on average overall, and so we include the extreme outliers so that when we look at that overall market comparison as a group, you compare it 100% of market so that those 2 don't drive the comparison. But they were included in your graph in the PowerPoint presentation, and they're listed here as well. So it's just for averages. It's for our averages for the average of the overall market position.
Okay, does that apply also to page 16? Or
Yes.
page 30? Where
Yes.
we only have one that's below the 90%, and we actually have, it has 2, but we actually only have 1.
So on page 30,
Yes, ma'am.
so on page 30, below 90% of market, you said?
Yes, there's, it indicates that we have 2 below the 90%,
Yeah.
and there's only 1 indicated below market.
Yeah, there's only one. So it picked up. It may not have been updated because there's only one that's at 85% of market,
Correct.
and that is your registered nurse.
No, it's the payroll supervisor. The registered nurse is
Oh,
at
that's-
112%.
That's right. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong line.
Okay, I just wanted to make that notation.
We can certainly make those, we can certainly update, we can certainly include them in the overall market comparison. So it's not like we didn't include them. You got the market comparisons there and they were in the graph as illustrated. It's just in the summary tables when we make some of those overall market comparisons, but we can certainly make sure that they're reflected in the summary table.
That's all, that's the only comment I have.
All right, thank you. Very good. Thank you very much.
Bruce, I want
Yes.
to thank you for your presentation, and again, if we could make those corrections and have them, the ones that Mrs. Webb pointed out.
Okay, we can certainly make those and then resend the document to Dr. Rios, and we'll also update that cost page so that you can have the costs reflected correctly as well.
This is a discussion item, so again, I want to thank everyone for the questions and especially Luz for the presentation. Very well done.
Thank you.
Again, board members, this is a discussion item, so the questions that were asked, we'll make those corrections and then come back at a later time and during our budget process and approve the salary study. There being no other questions, we'll go on to the second item that we have on our agenda. Second item that we have is item A. The reports, and this is the 2019-2020 revenue and expenditure projection. Amy Childress, this is a discussion item.
Good evening. Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. This evening, we would like to present to you a revenue and expenditures projection for the 2019-2020 general fund. As you can see, at this time, we are forecasting to end the 2019-2020 fiscal year with a revenue of $98,726,026 in revenue. This amount does take into consideration the reduction of the state aid that we had due to the homestead exemption and any forecast and reduction of ADAs that we are projecting at this time. For expenditures, we are forecasting to end the 2019-2020 fiscal year with activity of $95,418,578. This forecast results in an excess of revenue over expenditures in the amount of $3,307,448. Now, just as a note, this excess does not include the cost of some current construction projects that we are currently have in progress, and Dr. Rios will address those with the next slide. Any questions?
Amy, I have a question, Amy.
Yes.
This is after all the budget amendments, anything that had been ordered, had not been delivered, that includes everything.
Yes, sir. This is a projection we forecasted through the end of the year. This would be our actual activity, what we are forecasting to actual end the year with in actual activity.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Childress. Two other notes, Mr. Mesa, on that initial slide. First, it does take into account everything, including the premium pay that we're currently offering our employees who are coming in to work, whether it be food service or transportation. And it's also a conservative amount. Obviously, we don't want to project something and then it turn out that it'd be less. So it's a conservative amount, but for sure we can count on that much carryover. Now, the reason we're presenting this today is first to give the board an update as to where our budget sits, because I know there have been some concern because of the reduced state aid and other amendments that we had to make. But second, to talk about some of the projects, including one that's going to be presented today. So as you can see on this slide, the 3 projects that are listed have already started, at least in terms of engaging the architects. We haven't broken ground on the driveway expansion or the restroom renovations at the Del Refreshment or the commons area, but we have engaged the architects and do have the plans ready. So that $1.3 million will come out of that $3,307,000. And then moving forward for the next year, projects that we didn't get to finish this year, we'd like to just in advance inform the board that we would be recommending that then we allocate this money moving forward to complete the Del Rio life skills renovation so that we can begin to send out bids here in August. And then we didn't get a chance to do the Del Rio High School Stadium track, but then again, it wasn't used. Coach Smith and myself were out there yesterday looking at the track and the stadium. And there's some areas that need attention, but they can certainly last one more year. They just didn't get the wear and tear from this year. So this information will become important as we move over into the next items that we're going to recommend for approval. Are there any questions, Mr. Mesa, members of the board?
Board members, I'll open it up. Dr. Rios, I had one. I know that this year we've had, starting with projected values, revenue from the appraisal district, and then we had other pending litigation in regard to some monies. Nothing has come to fruition in those areas.
No, Mr. Mesa, they haven't. We visited before we started, spent a whole lot of time on the pandemic. We had visited with the attorneys, and they did look at possible litigation, and they examined other cases, how they had been tried, and most of them had been tried unsuccessfully. Therefore, it was a recommendation that we really think about whether we want to engage in litigation, knowing that other cases, particularly against the same person that this appraisal district had engaged, had resulted in positive gains for the district. So there was, the update is that we shouldn't do it, but they were going to look for other cases to see if there was any precedent set, but with no success.
Now, another question related to something totally different is the projected new revenue that should be coming from additional pipelines.
Yes, Mr. Mesa, this weekend, we're going to be sharing with you all the projected values. And obviously the projected values are a little bit higher. We haven't been able to dig down deep enough to see if it's additional pipelines. But by the time we share the information with you, either during this weekend's board update or the following week, we will have some indication of if there's any additional pipelines included in those projected values.
Okay. Those are the only questions I had. Again, this is only a discussion item. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to administration. First item that we have under administration is consider and take possible action on a resolution to determine 2020 spring semester grading policy, GPAs for the spring 2020 semester for the 2019-2020 through 2023-2024 class cohorts and class rank for the class of 2020 activities. This is an action item.
Yes, Mr. Mesa, members of the board, we started this discussion during the April board meeting, and at the time I shared with y'all one possible option was to create a pass-fail system for the second semester. And at that time, there had been some concern expressed by some of our parents that possibly there was another solution because some kids did the work and some kids didn't. So the administration went back and we reviewed other options. We looked at one particular option, which was, we'll just call it the UT model. And what they had indicated was that it's pass-fail for everyone. But if anybody chooses to opt in, meaning they want their GPA, their grades to actually be calculated in their GPA and be calculated in their class rank, then they have that option. They can provide some information. So if it's okay, Mr. Mesa, I'm going to share that resolution just to highlight some of the bullet points, briefly go over them, and then answer questions and then make a recommendation. Is it okay if I bring up that resolution now?
So that's fine. It's a long resolution, but yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring it over. I'm just going to share the piece of the resolution that has the, give me a second here, that has the, yes, sir. That has the actual items. Here, I found it. Give me 1 second, Mr. Mesa. Give me a real hard time here. This screen, everything got jumbled up for a second, but okay, here we go. I can share it now. Okay, I'll go over just the actual items that have an effect. The first one is that the final class rankings for the purpose of identifying students to be recognized and conferred top 10% salutatorian and valedictorian. And at this point, what really matters is the salutatorian and valedictorian for the 2019 would, in effect, end at the end of the first semester. We had the principals look at the class ranks, and it doesn't make a difference. In other words, the valedictorian that stands right now as a leader at ECHS and Delray High School wouldn't change, and neither would the valedictorian. They're so far ahead that current grades wouldn't make a difference. The second item, this is the one that I just finished discussing. Students in the 2019 through 2020 cohort through the 23-24 cohort would receive a numerical grade for the spring 2020 semester. However, for GPA purposes, they will be recorded as pass-fail GPA and will only reflect student work completed through the end of the third six weeks grading period for the fall 2019 semester. So in other words, semester for the first GPA counts in class rank, but for the second one, it's just pass-fail. Now, I want to be abundantly clear. The student still has to earn at least a 70 or higher for he or she to receive a passing grade. However, a student can request through a written notification, including email, that the GPA count towards their overall GPA and class rank recorded on the transcript. To avoid confusion, although numerical grades will be awarded for the spring 2020 semester, credits will be awarded on a pass-fail basis with no GPA implications for the semester unless a student and their parent affirmatively request, as directed above, to have their numerical grades count for GPA purposes. Then the third one just clarifies for the current senior class, if they want their GPA to count, then they should contact their principal by 5 p.m. May 2029. And then the fourth one just talks about kids taking dual credit because a college could possibly award a 60 as passing that doesn't translate as a passing grade. So therefore, any numerical grade awarded by the institution of higher learning for the spring 2020 semester, which ranges between 59.5 to 69.9, will automatically post to SFDR transcript as a 70, and the student will be awarded credit. Are there any questions to the recommended resolution?
Mr. Orfeld.
Thank you. Some clarification out of the resolution in part 2 of the resolution. For those watching at home and for my own clarification, it says, unless a student or parent guardian notify the director of PEIMS in writing, including email, by the end of the 5th 6 weeks grading period of the student's high school graduation year. So that is aimed at 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 23, 24, because obviously we're way past right now for the 5th 6 weeks. So that particular line is aimed at anyone who is a junior, sophomore, or freshman.
That is 100% correct, Mr. Orfeld. That's why the next bullet specifically talks about seniors.
Okay, and so on that one, afforded the opportunity to declare that they are irrevocably opting to have the numerical semester grade by 5 p.m. on May 29. When are senior grades due to the front office? If we were operating under a normal school year, when would teachers have to have the senior grades in?
Senior grades usually come in one entire week ahead. But again, this isn't a normal year, and we won't have graduation. Therefore, the students will be allotted to turn the grades in. Seniors could complete their grades like the regular students would, normal students, and that would be that work day when the teachers post the grade. So the work day is going to stay the same. And let me look at the calendar real quick here, Schoenfeld. That would be, the work day would be, if I'm correct, it would be June 1.
Okay, so if they don't post the grades until June 1, should that deadline not be pushed out till June 1 or 2? Because there may be some seniors who are waiting to see what their actual final grade is, GPA-wise, to determine if they want to take that GPA or the first semester's GPA.
Sure, we can make it June 5th for that matter. It doesn't have an impact.
Okay, I just have a couple more, Mr. Mesa, and then I'll yield the floor. On the dual credit, I know because this is the realm in which I work. A 60 through a 69.5 is a D in the college world, and it's considered passing, but is not at high school there. So I could have a ECHS student in one of my classes that makes a 61, and it's automatically going to jump to a 70?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if it did that, they could, and this ties into class ranking there, because I've got members who are in the top 8 in my classes, and this entire semester, they're to not count towards class ranking unless they particularly choose it. For those very competitive students, it still causes me a lot of worry, because those who are on the fringe of number 9, 8, 7, they are fighting for every single GPA point to go in and try and move one way or another, try and be in that top 10% for the ECHS, just like the top 20 over at Del Rio High are trying to do the same thing. So to wrap it up, for juniors, sophomores, or freshmen, they will have until the end of the 5th 6 weeks of their graduating year to determine whether or not they wanted that particular semester to count, right?
Yes, sir.
So we will be able to compute that over the next 3 years, if need be. We will have the ability to track and go back and look at spring of 2020 in 2 years and be able to calculate that out.
Yes, sir. I visited at length with our team's director.
Okay. That's all for now. I'll probably have some more later, Mr. Mesa.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith?
I'm just going to echo Mr. Overfelt on the date thing. So I mean, pushing that out to after June 1st just totally makes good sense to me. I think that should hold water. And you know, I think the hybrid approach, which, you know, thanks for listening for that, is a good one. I think that gives some opportunity that we wouldn't have had either direction. So I appreciate the diligence there looking for that different option. But I guess the key to the choice will be a communication tool. And have you put a lot of thought into making sure that everybody perfectly understands what the rules are and what the methods are for asking and making the choices of those kinds of things?
If I may, there's 2 things that we will immediately do after the board takes action. One, we're lucky to have direct email communication with all of the students, either because of the survey we launched or because of the way we've been sending work home. So we will definitely send an announcement via email directly to students and the parents. We will do a press release that will be tweeted out and Facebooked out and hopefully shared a whole lot. We will consider other options when we visit with the senior group so that they can put it in their chat groups that they have, which seem to get a lot more response than some of the other means that we've been using. So we'll definitely do our best to promote that out there, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I guess maybe we might, you know, so that we understand that everybody had the opportunity, right, to understand. Maybe there's something that we could do, something that we could get back that acknowledges that they have these rights. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, obviously there's some fair amount of emotion in that, and rightfully so. So something that says, hey, I do know that I got it and I have the choice to make a choice. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. What immediately comes to mind, and I will definitely visit with the principals to see what else they suggest, but what immediately comes to mind is to get a statement from each one of the case managers that says, I visited directly with all 10 students and they all understand and have received a copy of it. If that's not good enough, then we can definitely see how we can have direct contact, but through the counselors at the high school. I'll visit with the principals and make sure that we do the best we can.
That's all the questions I've got at this moment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. I think those are very valid questions, and I just want to make, emphasize one sentence there on number 2 is once a student or parent decides that the numerical grades count for GPA, that is going to be a final decision that cannot be changed. So I want to make sure that that's either in bold, so that, either or read, so that they can understand that that's a very important statement there on number 2.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else with a question?
Mr. Contreras had a question.
Mr. Contreras?
Dr. Rios, will we have somebody available, counselors and phone numbers for parents that might not understand the consequences, especially if it's first time, how the system works, using their pass-fail or GPA, just in case they have any questions going into college for their children?
Yes, sir. We will have that phone number available when we do the press releases and the letters to each individual student.
Right.
Mr. Orfeld, you had a question, sir?
Yeah, just, I know that, and not to be pessimistic, but I know health experts are saying, you know, we may get another big wave in the fall there. If the worst happens and we have to go to home-based instruction again in the sometime in the fall or right before Christmas again, is this something that we'll have to look at again every time they're, you know, freezing GPAs or whatnot?
Mr. Mesa, if I may?
Yes, sir.
I'm probably going to give you a longer answer than what you're hoping for, but we know.
It's really loud downstairs. Yeah, the TV, everything is really loud.
Reno, can you mute yourself? Okay, we know that we have to make plans for August. First off, I just have to make sure that that we're prepared should we not be able to start in August. And we want to take this month and the summer to make sure that our instruction is well above what we've been able to do now. So to that end, we're doing a whole lot of studying of possibilities where we could have different hybrid models of instruction. It would involve a whole lot of video conferencing so that we would have the actual platform, whether it be Blackboard or Office 360, where a whole lot of lessons could be done directly. Mr. Henge, our Chief Operations Officer, he is working to have all our addresses for students, compare that with all the addresses that Time Warner has, or I guess now it's Spectrum, to see how many kids don't have internet and see what we can do to work with Spectrum to make sure that everybody has affordable internet, and see what grants there are to make sure that everybody has high-speed internet before August, so that our instruction could be at a level that would normally be in a classroom, so that we don't have to go back and say, how do we shift GPAs? How do we handle new learning? Right now, it's fairly easy because we cover most of the curriculum by February for sure. So a whole lot of the work that the students are getting is practice, particularly as it comes to reading. But that's not the case the following year. A student that promotes from second to third grade, it's a whole lot new learning. So we have to be prepared to have a whole lot more direct instruction. Now, if we're successful in making sure that students have connectivity and making sure that we're able to provide new instruction, if we're able to up the rigor just a little bit more, then there won't be a need to revisit GPAs. We can do everything one step above. That's our hope. So our hope is that we don't have to come revisit. But this did happen overnight, and so that's why we're recommending something different.
Anyone else? Mr. Orfeld?
No, I was going to say thank you. I'm glad y'all are tabletoping it already, tabletop exercising in the event that happens. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Ms. Webb?
Google what Dr. Rios just stated. Could something like that be put into the handbook for next year in the event that something was to occur?
Yes, we can definitely update our handbooks, and I know that Ms. Hernandez is taking notes, so we'll definitely look at that.
And I also concur with moving the date to June and a statement put in there for the parents that do request that the GPAs be counted so that they are aware that once they sign, the GPAs will be added at the end of the semester. It's not like, I want it today, but not tomorrow. So, thank you, Mr. Mesa.
Anyone else with a question? Hearing none, the recommendation, Dr. Rios?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mesa, members of the board, it is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the resolution to determine the 2020 spring semester grading policy GPAs for the spring 2020 semester for the 2019-2020 through 23-24 class cohorts and class rank for the class of 2020, with the one exception changing the due date from May 29th through June 5th for our current seniors.
Okay, hearing the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Mr. Contreras, seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor, I'll ask each one, starting with Amy. 4, myself, 4, Mr. Contreras.
4.
4, Ms. Webb. 4, Mr. Smith. 4, and Ms. Gonzalez. And Mr. Orfeld. Unanimous. This motion passes unanimous. Next item that we have under administration is item 11B, discussion regarding alternative plans for a graduation ceremony for the class of 2020. Again, this is a discussion item. Dr. Rios?
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint and share the screen with you all so that we can briefly discuss some bullet points. Let me. The high school graduation for the 2020. When we talked last time, we discussed different considerations for the graduation for our current class. And we indicated that we would talk with a group of seniors, which was facilitated by the high school principals. We had the conversation. And on May 4th, we launched a survey. Then on May 5th, the governor released some requirements for graduations and closing ceremonies. And then the survey closed on May 6th. I think that what was highlighted by the governor was very much in line with what the students had selected to put on the survey. However, there are some maybe misleading messages when we look at what the governor said and we put it in the context. And so we want to clarify some of that today. But first, we want to review the results of the survey. The first choice for students was predominantly option F. You can see that option F received 189 choices to option C. And then on the second choice and the third choice, you can see the difference. So I want to review with you what option C and option F are. Option F was postpone the traditional graduation ceremony to a date where the stay-at-home restrictions could be lifted, with the understanding that restrictions could extend through August and beyond, and that the postponement could result in the reduced number of students. But still, we had 189 of the respondents select option F. The second option that had the most votes, and that was 100 students voted for that, and then 119 made it their second choice and 49 made their third choice, included having a graduation ceremony of 100 students where two parents could attend. We'd have 2 graduation sessions per day. Students would be seated 6 feet apart. Student speakers would be asked to attend all sessions. 2 parents per graduation would be permitted to attend. Other family and guests would watch it from home. and parking access would be by permit only. If we look at these recommendations that we put out, even before the governor released his guidance, there's some striking similarities, Mr. Mesa, but the difficulty now is what do we do? Because what the governor told us, so if we consider option F, which is the students want to wait until there is the opportunity to have a more traditional graduation. If we look at what the governor said, for example, he says that we must cap the number of total participants in order to maximize social distancing, which is 6 feet apart, during the event, upon entry and upon exit. That means that we have to have a manageable crowd where the crowd can come in and as they're coming in, be 6 feet apart. As they leave, be 6 feet apart. Only have school employees that are absolutely necessary. Make sure that there's face coverings. Prior to attending the ceremony, students and parents must be pre-screened. So if we look at all of this, it still makes it impossible to have an outdoor ceremony for all 600 students at once. To begin with, if we were trying to sit just 2 parents or two visitors per graduate, we wouldn't have enough room. We went and counted seats. The high school principal, Dr. Perez, Rick Smith, the athletic director, and myself, we went out there and we took a measuring tape to see how many people we could sit. And we'd have to use the visitor side, the home side, and the entire track to fit enough parents. The problem with that is that it's almost impossible to control as they're coming in and going out, and it wouldn't be possible. What needs to happen is that we need to make a decision. If we go with the student's recommendation to wait, it could be forever and not happen. Or we could reconvene the student advisory committee that we visited before and review the results with them, advise them of the governor's rules for graduation, and brainstorm other possible options. Because unfortunately, even with some of the restrictions that the governor lifted, there's just absolutely no way to have a traditional graduation where all 600 students participate. We can do 300 students at a time and have 2 graduations and have them have 2 parents and be able to monitor it more adequately. At this time, unless there's other guidance from the board, that's what I would recommend that we do, that we assemble that group of kids, that ad hoc graduation committee, and share the options, share the results with them, and share the most we can do given the limitations that have been shared with us by the governor and the commissioner of education. Are there any questions, Mr. Mesa, members of the board?
Questions? I'll ask board members first. Mr. Contreras?
Yeah, Dr. Rios, how many seniors? What's the senior class? What's the number, and how many of those voted?
We believe that it's very close to 600 given the 3 campuses, given blended, early college high school, and the Del Rio High School. And as far as the number of votes, if I look at the one slide that shares the results, it appears that the total number of students that voted was probably, let's see, it's 289, 320, real close to 380. And that, I'm just guessing by the numbers, but it's right around 380, sir, which is a good percentage considering when you take a survey, we came, I believe that's closer to 60%. So that's a real good participation.
Yeah, no, I was wondering, I mean, how many, and then the ECHS class, how many kids do they have? Don't they have about 100 for them to where they would be able to have their own graduation because they have about 100 if possible?
Yeah, that is a possibility. Now, we did have a whole lot of communication last year, and even when we first formed the cohort, the ECS cohort, about how the graduations would be together, how they competed on one field and they participated in one UIL team, and how they should be together in graduation. And I would just advise the board to remember those commitments that we made then, so that nobody would have anything more or less.
And I understand, it's just that in a normal, if we weren't in the current situation we were in, of course, that wouldn't be an issue and the conversation wouldn't even happen. However, given the fact that, as Mr. Overfeld just mentioned a while ago, that we might expect a second wave later on, I mean, that choice, the choice F, I think it's not even an option, because we could potentially, like you mentioned earlier, might not even happen, or given the opportunity to happen, so I think we would have to, and then I have a concern that group of kids that you mentioned that you might want to revisit might have their feelings influence the fact that, of course, we all want the traditional graduation. I think that's what everybody would want, but at this point, I don't know if it would be possible.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. Mr. Orfeld, did you have a question? Yes.
Or just comment. I know, and I saw that in the PowerPoint, you had the stuff that the governor released, because I saw TEA at 4:30 released an updated version of it, and it seems to be that's where your information came from. And in that in that update, they go as far as to say that under the current orders by TEA and the governor, we can't even physically hand them the diploma unless everybody's wearing gloves and masks and stuff. And then, you talk about controlling it. When it's all over and done with, normally everybody wants to come onto the field, and trying to stop a mass of individuals coming onto the field and violating social distancing, which is still in effect right now, does cause a major hindrance to it. So yeah, I think, unfortunately, maybe the group needs to be reassembled and said, but this is what the governor has said in TEA, which is, even somewhat higher than the school board itself in making these decisions, and look at it. And if we have to call another special meeting here in the next 14 days, I'm fine with that, to discuss graduation. But unfortunately, with the stuff that TEA has put in place and the governor's put in place, the most favored options almost start to become impossible.
Thank you for the comments, Dr. Rich.
We're having another meeting on May 18th, the regular board meeting. So we'll have an update, and I visited with the principals, and if we needed to put a graduation together, first off, we wouldn't have one until the first or second week in June. And if we made a decision on May 18th, then there'd still be enough time to plan one and get everything done. The high school is moving forward with putting a program together. So we're not going to wait till the last minute to start putting things together. It would just be organizing the final steps.
Dr. Riz, I wanted to make two comments. One, the class of 2020 should be together. They're all seniors. I would not want for them to be separated, early college, high school, and high school. We're all one class of 2020. The other thing is, if the students chose option 5 to be held at a later time, I think the participation would be reduced a great lot, a whole lot, with students already going off somewhere. It's hard to get the whole class back together. Probably participation would be somewhere 60%, 50%. And, it's not the same. These are difficult times. I know it's a discussion item only, but I think we need to continue just waiting and see what happens because it's not over yet. I would like to say that, one thing that I would like for students to have is a picture with their diploma. They've earned it. And, it's unfortunate that we can't have Life Touch come and do the traditional portrait, but they've earned the diploma and picture would be great. I don't know how that could happen, but again, this is just for discussion.
One thing that
Yes.
Mr. Russell, one thing that we are doing, and I think the entire community has tried to think of just different ways to honor our seniors because times are different. And we'll continue to think of ways, but what we're doing is we are right now improving the patio in the back of this building with signs, and there's plenty of shade and grass and putting some additional flowers in. We're going to invite students to come and take pictures with a different props celebrating the class of 2020. They need to bring their own photographer, and we'll have enough security out there to ensure that students keep their social distancing, but just give them a nice background to be able to get some pictures. And we'll continue to work in graduation, and maybe we will have a recommendation by May 18th. We'll do as much as we can to visit with the students before then, because if we don't make a decision on May 18th, then it's just gonna sit there and possibly have a graduation in July. But the longer we wait, just like you said, the less participation that there will be. And in hearing, just like everyone, in hearing feedback from parents want a graduation. They want to see their students receive a diploma, at least a whole lot of them that have reached out.
Amy had her hand raised. Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. I just think that we need to just be real with the students the next time we meet with them, Dr. Rios. With the seniors, just be honest and real with them so they can make a real good decision, because me personally, I think waiting, just like Mr. Mesa said, people are gonna go off and start new adventures and, a new life. We just don't know, but I think if you're just real with them, like you have been, and just be honest and just let them know up front, maybe they'll make the right decision. Because as a parent, you definitely want to see your child graduate. You really do. But let's just keep it real with them, with the seniors, and lay it out to them just as real as possible. Because I don't want to see them waiting and prolonging even more. That's my opinion. But let's just keep it real with them. Thank you, Mr. Mesa.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we'll move on to the next item. This was the discussion item. Next item that we have is item 13A, consideration to approve the schematic design documents with GoEro International LLC for the new elementary school campus. Mr. Henge.
Yes, sir. I'll be handling this item. We have Mr. Octavio from GoEro. He's in the waiting room, so I see that he's brought on now. I'm going to share the screen and ask him to make his presentation. So here, give me 1 second. Octavio, are you there? It's connecting to the audio. Let's give him a second. We still can't hear you, Octavio. It says it's connecting to audio. Give it a second. Okay, you're there now, yes? Octavio, can you hear us? He's having some technical difficulties. We'll give him a second. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Octavio.
Let's see.
All right, I think he's there now, Mr. Mesa. I'll ask him to move forward with his presentation. Go ahead, Octavio.
Good evening. How's everybody doing? Here today to bring back the exterior elevations and the administration for the new Del Rio Elementary School. And what we have on the screen here before you is the revised elevation. We added the canopy in the front, much like what's at Garfield. So this would be the view directly looking at it. This is kind of the view from a corner. The space right there in front of you on the right, that's the library. You can kind of see the angle of the canopy in the front. That's a little bit of a close-up view. The library is on the far right, and then immediately to the left is the dining commons or the cafeteria. And then this is a side view, so you can see the canopy for the drop-off. That's the side behind the library and the gym. So there's a canopy along here that allows you to drop off under cover. And then this here's just a comparison of where we were last time for the administration. The one that we presented last time was on the left, number 1. And you can see on the one on the right, number 2, kind of see we opened up that center a little bit and created more of a little bit of a collaboration space so that everybody basically opens up into that area instead of just a hallway. That's kind of the update that we have. If there's any questions or any comments.
Board members, Ms. Webb?
First of all, where it says 2, it's option 3 on the thing. So it's just, you have 1 and 2, but it's option 3. My concern, and I brought it up to Dr. Rios, it was that there is no real space for a conference for the counselor. You have added on there, which is a great thing, the art room next to the counselor's office with the door leading from the counselor to the art room, but there's no real space for the counselor to have conferences with individual groups, group sessions dealing with mental health, bullying, or conflict resolutions. So I made a recommendation to Dr. Rios that if you look at where the wall is for the clinic and the ending wall between the counselor's office and the art room, if we extend that out and make it parallel to the clinic, that area can be right there for the counselor's conference area with her students. Because it's very difficult for a counselor to have to be looking for space to work with students, especially in this day and age when we're dealing with mental health, disabilities, and other issues. They have to have their own space. They can't be looking for something. And we can't take away the art room because as educators, there are many arts held throughout the day and the week. So as I was looking at the diagram, that would be an easy solution if we just add 2 walls and extend it out.
That's definitely an option and a great suggestion. The only comment I have is if we look at the north wall in the clinic, we may have to move that one down as well and take a little bit of space out of the clinic in order to extend the same width of the counselor out.
Okay.
So there's sufficient depth there to make the space usable. Would you be all right if we did that? Take a little bit of space from the clinic in order to give it to relocate.
Everybody be all right with that? I mean, the counselor needs to have a space to work with students. That's, I mean, and being a counselor, a past counselor myself, I often had to take kids and work with them outside because I did not have a space to work with them. So a counselor has to have some sort of a space to work with students, whether it's individual or as a group. And you're talking about confidentiality, you're talking about privacy with the students. So I'm good with losing a little bit of space from the clinic if that's necessary. I don't know about what everybody else thinks. That's all, Mr. Mesa. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. Mental health is going to be a topic that is going to be real for this year in addressing the needs of certain students. And so I agree with Mrs. Webb if we could add an area, just what Mr. Octavio did right now in regard to private area and then right adjacent to the counselor.
Mr. Smith has a question, Mr. Mesa.
Mr. Smith, I don't see his. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, not really a question. Probably more of an agreement. I think you did, thanks for listening. Your exterior rendering, I'm pleased with that. I think that models well. And, I have absolutely no objection to support Ms. Webb's recommendation. I have no issue with that. Good job on making those changes that we talked about last time. So thank you very much. That's all I've got.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Octavio?
No? If everybody's in agreement with that, we can easily make that change and incorporate it.
Would everyone be okay with that? Seems like it is. Dr. Reyes?
Mr. Mesa, understanding the change that Ms. Webb recommended and that Octavio said that he could easily do, can we approve the schematic design just with the understanding that, as discussed, we would extend the current counselor's office and take some space from the clinic so that they could get going on the documents, start working on the construction documents?
I think that would be fine with everyone, unless someone objects.
I'm good with it.
I'll read the recommendation then.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Mesa, members of the board, it is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the schematic design documents as discussed, with modifications discussed in open session, and allow GoERO International to move forward with the construction documents for the new elementary school campus.
You've heard the recommendation. There's a motion from Mr. Smith, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Again, Amy. In favor, myself in favor. Mr. Contreras?
Favor.
In favor, Mrs. Webb? In favor, Mr. Smith? In favor, Diana Gonzalez? And Mr. Smith? And Mr. Powerful comes through. Everyone's in favor, unanimous. Motion is approved.
Octavio, if you can stay there, not go anywhere yet in case there's any questions on the next item.
Sure.
Next item that we have is item 13B, consideration to approve the request for competitive seal proposal RFP 20-18 for the Diamond Commons renovations at Del High School and subsequent contract. Dr. Reyes.
Yes, Mr. Mesa, because of the time that the bids were open and the time we took to examine the results and negotiate, we provided an updated memo to each and every one of you. It should be in your desk at the top part. It's called 13B. It has it in red lettering. I'm going to review that memo briefly, and then we can have discussion or answer questions. May I proceed?
Yes, sir.
We sent out RFP 20-18. We received the results. There was 3 contractors that submitted bids. Noble Texas Builders, Frontera Construction, and JP Sanchez Construction. As indicated on the memo, Noble Texas Builders submitted a bid of $1.1 million and an additional cost of $38,752 for the alternate. Frontera Construction submitted a bid of $1,267,750 with an alternate bid of $126,100. JP Sanchez Construction submitted a bid of $1.5 million with an alternate bid of $144,915.50. The alternate bid, all it involves is having, instead of having paint on the pony walls for the ramps, it's having acoustical walls to further absorb the noise in there, and that carries through different parts of that high school commons area. So based on the approved grading criteria, the submittal scored as follows. Noble Texas Builders was first with 318 points, then Frontera Construction with 260, and JP Sanchez Construction came in third. Based on the grading results, we proceeded to negotiate a best and final offer with Noble Texas Builders, resulting in a contract of $869,000 inclusive of the alternate, but excluding the electrical work. Because we've had a whole lot of success having our maintenance department complete the electrical work, because we have a licensed electrician, a master electrician, we did all of the electrical work in the renovations, which were the 400 and the old 200, now the 100 wing. So we feel very confident after discussing this with the personnel that we can move forward and award the contract to Noble Texas Builders and have our team do the electrical work. Are there any questions?
Mr. Overfield?
Where's Noble located out of?
Noble is in Lafayette, Texas, and then they have offices also in San Antonio.
And are they going to be bringing the vast majority of their workforce in from out of town, or will they be using local subs?
I don't know, since they haven't quite yet completed contracts with subcontractors. I don't know who exactly.
Okay.
I believe that the HEBs and such doing some work there. So they're in the area doing some other work.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Contreras?
Basically geared around the same questions that Mr. Overfield had. Where's Noble Builders from, and how much of a difference are we talking from Noble Builders to Frontera, which is the second option? Well, what are we looking at?
Yes, sir. We allowed Frontera, because they were the closest bidder, to provide a second bid, or at least give us a price without the electrical work. And the difference after we removed the electrical work, I have it here. Let me call it up really quick. It was a difference of $4,000 except for the alternate. The alternate is a big difference. The alternate, if we were to move forward with the alternate, the price difference is significant. Of course, we don't have to do the alternate, but in that case, we would have to go back and rescore because of the procurement process that we use. We didn't use a closed bid proposal where it's only the money. We use other grading criteria. So in all fairness, we would have to go back and rescore and then bring back to y'all at the next board meeting. That's if we chose to not do the alternate. Obviously, we bid all of it because our intention was to do all of it. but that's where we're at.
I think if on the first go around, it's only a 4,000 difference. I think we need to consider, and I've always been for having the local contractors, local workforce, and especially in today's day and age that we need to help our community. I mean, if not going with the alternate, and if it's only a $4,000, I mean, I think we ought to at least, and I don't know about the other board members, however, I think we ought to discuss it and maybe rescore. I mean, but of course, that's just my opinion, and it's up to everybody else.
I agree with Mr. Contreras. I think that small of the delta we should.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Dr. Rios, what was the alternative in regard to the other amount?
The alternative, if you look at the attachment that I shared with you, Noble Texas Builders bid $38,752 to complete the alternate, and Frontera Construction bid $126,100 to complete the alternate. I'll have Octavio further describe what all is involved in the alternate one, just so we can gauge whether it's something that y'all would like to include or not. Go ahead, Octavio.
Sure. The alternate, as y'all recall, when we presented the dining commons, we had some acoustical treatments on the ceilings to help with reduce the sound in the dining commons. And the alternate was some additional sound treatment down low on the little pony walls. So that's what it entails. It entails an overall, at the end of the day, if you can get more acoustical sound treatment, you're going to have a quieter space. But like Dr. Rios said, the price from one contractor was $38,000 for the alternate, and from the other was $100,000 and some odd for the same material, same alternate.
I think the question that we're asking is because we are not familiar with Noble, but I think, Octavio, I'm sure that in the San Antonio area, have they been working closely with schools in regard to the type of project that we have here?
The gentleman that started Texas Noble worked with Spall Glass for a very long time. They've done a lot of our project. We went ahead and informed them that there's a project in Del Rio, and they said, well, you know what, we're in Del Rio right now. That's exactly the type of project that we like to do. And they went ahead and proposed on it. They've done all sorts of projects. They do a lot of repeat work for HEB, and they do big public utility buildings, and they do schools also. So,
thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Wade?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a difference on the alternate of over 88,000. And when we look at all of that, and anytime that we've had construction, there's always something that needs to be added afterwards. So I'm looking at the fact that that we're already looking above and beyond. And I would say that our district has always gone with the lowest bidder. Am I correct or wrong, Dr. Rios?
Well, the procurement process that we used doesn't necessarily require you to go over the lowest bidder because of the entire value of the project. But in most cases, I would just say that, yes, the district has gone with lowest bidder. Now, Mr. Mesa, to be able to answer some of the other concerns expressed, I know that there's concern about outside subcontractors coming to work in the area, not because of the quality of work, but just because of the current pandemic that's going on. So I get it. And local contractors usually use local subcontractors. So if y'all don't want to approve the project right now, there's a couple of things that we have to consider. First, I have to visit with legal counsel because we have a bid. So then they have to guide me on whether we have to rebid it altogether We do have grounds to rebid because it did come in over the budget that we have. But we also have to consider that when we ask for a rebid, the contractors could increase the prices that they submit. So it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get a better bid. But I would feel a whole lot better talking to general counsel on how to proceed. Do we go and negotiate a lower price, or do we go and have to rebid it? And just for the sake of the best interest of the district, I would like to get advice from general counsel if y'all directed me to not accept any bids tonight and not make any recommendation.
Dr. Rios, I just want to say that that comes to mind, with outsiders coming in to do some work, but it's inevitable. I mean, this is something that is going to happen, not only during this time, but we always have people from outside, bidding on projects. And so I think, in my opinion, I think we're ready to move on this subject tonight. Mr. Smith?
The only question that I've got, I'm okay with moving forward as well, but this alternate thing seems to be the wild card to me, right? I mean, it's like I'm not understanding how that got in here. So talk through that for me. It's like a little bit, right?
When we looked, when GoERO provided us a budget to complete this project, we knew upfront that the project was going to be more expensive than what we had budgeted for. So then when that happens, we ask for the bids to come in separate phases with separated items that we can do without, that are good to have, but not 100% essential. So in the case of the pony walls, these are just walls that go around the ramp. There will be some acoustical benefit that's provided, but another option is just paint them. So rather than put that nice thick acoustical board that absorbs the sound, paint them. So we asked the architect to allow for that to be a separate bid item because it's not as important as the ceiling. The ceiling covers a whole lot more area, and that's how that happened. And that's something that usually happens in projects and how we bid them out.
And so I guess where I would be at is you pull that and then we go from there, right? And then do that as a separate subject later. If we decided to, I mean, to me, it's just not necessary. We don't even know what acoustic value we're going to get out of the ceiling. If that covers it and we're comfortable, then why spend the extra, right?
We could, if we took action tonight, we could reduce the overall contract and budget by the $38,752. That is one option.
Any other discussion? Mr. Contreras?
Yeah, so going back to what Mr. Smith's saying, basically saying, so if we took that out, then we're only looking at a $4,000 difference between Frontera and the other company, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Someone? Yeah. So, hearing no other questions, we'll go with the recommendation, sir.
Just to be clear, I'm required to recommend the company that scored the highest on the bidding criteria. So it doesn't change the recommendation. I still have to recommend Noble Texas Builders unless y'all direct me to go talk to General Counsel about rebidding this. Okay. You still want me to read the recommendation?
I just want to ask board members. Mr. Gutierrez?
Can you wait, for me, like I said, we're looking at a $4,000 difference. I would go with Frontera, and I would suggest you ask General Counsel. I mean, $4,000 difference is not much at this point for me. And seeing how we might not get the value for that acoustic. My personal opinion is just ask General Counsel if we can wait till the next meeting of May the 18th, I believe. Or sooner if you can find out.
What all is involved in that scoring besides cost?
We used a criteria that the board approved at the last meeting.
Yeah.
And there's obviously there's the safety record. There is experience with similar projects. Cost is 60%. I'd rather look it up real quick so that I can read directly from it. I don't want to.
Can we do this? Could we take and review that scoring for each of the two top bidders during closed session and then bring the subject back?
No, sir, we can't. It's not listed in closed session. I'd have to bring it back in 2 weeks at the regular May board meeting. We cannot discuss in closed session.
That's fine. So can you show the scoring in open session?
Sure. I can. Yeah, absolutely. It's not. There's no secret to it. Let me.
I was just trying to make it simple. I wasn't trying to break a rule.
Yeah. Let me just find the email here. Give me 1 second, and I'll definitely call it up.
While you're doing that, Mrs. Webb had a question.
I just have a question for Mr. Montu. On the acoustic, if we delete that, are we ever gonna come back and say that we do need it?
Short of having an acoustician come in and do some readings initially and stuff, everything that we're doing is kind of best practices. It's a very high sound attenuating material that does an excellent job of doing it. But short of having an actual acoustician go and take.
So I guess, what is the importance of it?
It attenuates the sound. So instead of having the reverb, the sound just bouncing around everywhere, it absorbs the sound. So that in itself diminishes the kind of, the cacophony of the noise that you're going to have in that space, given that it's wide open, it's a lot of hard surfaces, that kind of thing.
So in reality, it's something that would be beneficial to the students, correct?
Oh, yes. It makes the space more comfortable.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
And so to elaborate a little bit more on Ms. Webb's comments, so that I'm clear, is that the project already includes acoustics?
We added sound treatments on the underside of the roof deck. Yes.
And so this is an enhancement that we don't know what the real value would be until after the project is over and tested. And that's the second question would be, these are at ground level, and then what's the long-term maintenance of something that's at ground level that kids are leaning against, whatever, put their foot on, whatever. What's the likelihood of damaging that at that level inside the lunch area?
We've used this material in several projects in different applications, high and low, and we've had good success with it. I don't know how the kids use the dining commons, but we have used it in places where it is subject to some kind of traffic, and it's held up well. But not knowing the kids there, I don't know if, it's the same type of usage or not, but it has been used with lots of kids in different areas.
Dr. Rios, do you have the scoring?
Yes, what I'm going to do, Mr. Mesa, is I am going to call up one scoring document and just share with y'all again the criteria. And it'll be very cumbersome to look at all of them because we had 6 different people score it. So I'm going to ask Mr. Henge, and I know they're listening, to start making copies so that everybody can see it. We could table this till after closed session to make sure that we get a chance to review it. I will share the screen right now, however, to look at that scoring criteria. Just give me a second. I gotta.
Thank you, Octavio, for answering Mr. Smith's question.
Yes, sir.
To the acoustics.
There's this particular sheet, I believe, was for Frontera Construction. No, this because it got the whole 60 points. Well, this is just a generic sheet with how many points. So the project cost was worth 60%. Number of similar projects completed on time and within budget by a contractor during the last 5 years, that was 5 points out of the 100. The flexibility to work other than normal business hours and on weekends was 10 points. The contractor's reputation, favorable and unfavorable references of contractor for similar projects was 5 points. The contractor's proposed personnel for this project, the experience of the proposed personnel with similar scope projects, contractor should submit a list of proposed personnel and their experience with the project. So at this point, we should have a list of all the subcontractors that they're using. Contractor safety record, warranties, ability to secure the bonds, financial strength of the contractors, 5 points. Subcontractor to be used for this project, contractor must submit a list of proposed subcontractors together with proposal. That was 5 points. So this is the scoring sheet that was used. And well, that's just a generic one. So if y'all would like, Mr. Mesa, you could table it and I could have Mr. Henge print copies and y'all could look at how everybody scored it. That's up to y'all.
Mr. Smith?
Make a motion to table until after closed session.
There's a motion and a second by Mr. Contreras. All those in favor? Let's start with Amy. In favor? In favor? Mr. Contreras? In favor? Mrs. Webb? In favor? Mr. Smith? In favor? Diana Gonzalez? Mr. Orfeld? In favor? Okay, we're going to table this and bring it back up again once we get the paper copies. Okay. Thank you, Octavio.
Thank you, Mr.
The time is 8:09. We're now going to go into closed session permitted by sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.073, 551.074, 551.076, and 551.082, 551.084, and 551.087 of the Gun Code Texas Open Meetings Act. If a final vote is required, it will be taken upon reconvening into open session. We're now in closed session. Okay, the time is 8:56 p.m. We're now reconvening into open session. No action was taken in executive session. We're going to go back to an item that we had tabled. First item that we need to do is item 13B, consideration to approve the request for competitive seal proposal, RFP 20-18 for the dining commons renovation at the Doria High School and subsequent contract. Dr. Rios?
muted, I'm sorry. Okay, is there any discussion or do I read the recommendation?
Any other discussion? I think that's it, sir. You read the recommendation?
Oh, Mr. Smith has a question.
Oh, Mr. Smith, sorry.
I don't have any questions, just a comment tied to the scoring tool. I think the scoring tool works very well and it tells a very important message. So thank you for putting that together, for one. I mean, that's a great tool. In the future, when we have competitive bids, I'd like to see this before we get into the subject matter. So makes it easy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, we're ready for the recommendations.
Thank you. Board President Mesa, members of the board, it is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve request for competitive proposal RFP number 20-18, dining commons renovations at Del Rio High School, to Noble Texas Builders LLC, and authorize the superintendent of schools to sign a contract, purchase order over $25,000 for services in the amount not to exceed $869,752 with an overall project budget of $1,159,752.
You've heard the motion, the recommendation rather, we'll entertain a motion for approval. Motion by Mr. Overfeld. Is there a second to the motion? Mrs. Webb, all those in favor, I'll start with Amy Haynes. In favor, myself in favor. Mr. Contreras?
Favor.
In favor. Mrs. Webb? In favor. Diana Gonzalez? In favor. Mr. Smith? In favor, and Mr. Overfeld. Motion is carried unanimously, sir. Motion is approved. We're now going into item 19C. Consideration and take possible action to approve resolution authorizing superintendent to execute contract and for purchase of real property for the construction of new elementary school. Dr. Rios.
Yes, Mr. Mesa, as discussed in closed session, I'll be recommending that the board approve a resolution. Would you like me to read the recommendation now?
Yes, sir.
Board President Mesa, members of the board, it is the recommendation of the administration that the board approve resolution authorizing the superintendent to execute a contract on behalf of San Felipe Del Rio CISD and purchase that certain tract of real property located in Del Rio, Valverde County, Texas, after due diligence studies and deem the property appropriate for the intended purposes of constructing a new elementary school.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval? Mr. Smith, second by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor, Amy Haynes? In favor, myself in favor, Mr. Contreras?
Favor.
Mrs. Webb, in favor, Diana Gonzalez? In favor, Mr. Smith? In favor, Mr. Overfeld? Motion carries unanimously, sir. Motion's approved. There being no other items on the agenda, is there a motion for adjournment? Mr. Overfeld, seconded by Mr. Smith. All those in favor? Motion is approved. We are adjourned. Thank you and good evening. Good night.